So she's
I mean,
a
they
serial
sound reasonable.
fraudster. That's called fraud. She and her husband are bullies. She seems like kind of a jerk. Wow, she's like kind of a bully. She's rather mean. Claims he sexual harassed her, and then by the time they premiered the movie, they weren't even speaking to each other. She made him stay in the basement, and Ryan Reynolds turned on him too. And then she claimed that he unleashed a bad PR campaign against. 2009 Glamour UK interview by Blake Lively. She was on the cover at the time, and in her interview, she admitted to trying to poison the cast of Gossip Girl.
Blake Lively is spiraling after Megyn Kelly just ripped the mask off her carefully crafted image in the most savage way imaginable. For years, Blake strutted through Hollywood like royalty, crushing people, humiliating them on live TV, and acting like she was untouchable. But now, Megyn has fearlessly yanked her skeletons out of the closet for the world to see. The empire of smoke and mirrors is finally collapsing, and the truth about Blake Lively's so-called Golden Girl reputation is out in the open. Lawless, graceful, effortlessly likable, at least that's what the PR machine wanted everyone to believe. But Megyn Kelly just hit rewind and exposed the whole performance for what it really was, a carefully crafted illusion. Before Blake was taking over It Ends With Us and reportedly calling the shots on Justin Baldoni, she was already laying the groundwork for her own Hollywood power trip. Back in her Gossip Girl days, Blake wasn't just playing a social schemer on screen. She was pulling strings in real life. In a 2009 interview, she casually admitted to turning the cast against Penn Badgley just because she didn't like him at first. Not ignoring him, not keeping it professional, she went full high school mean girl, using her influence to ice him out. And the twist? She later admitted he was actually a nice guy, meaning the whole power play wasn't about him. It was about making sure she stayed center stage. And that was just the beginning. Blake mastered the art of playing innocent while making sure others got pushed out of the frame. She charmed the media, kept her reputation spotless, and pulled the strings so smoothly no one even noticed. But now, she's caught in the middle of a Hollywood courtroom circus, and for the first time, no one's rushing to save her. Not a single Gossip Girl co-star has come to Blake Lively's defense. Leighton Meester? Silent? Penn Badgley? Nowhere to be found. The rest of the cast? Acting like she never even existed. These are people who spent 6 years working with her. If anyone wanted to vouch for her, now would be the time. But the silence? It's louder than words. Her fallout with Leighton Meester is just another piece of the puzzle. On screen, Serena and Blair were the ultimate besties, but behind the scenes, a total disaster. Blake, always obsessed with staying in the spotlight, reportedly got frustrated when Leighton focused on acting rather than chasing celebrity status. By the time the show ended, they weren't even speaking. And now, with Blake's legal mess making headlines, Leighton isn't lifting a finger to defend her. Almost like karma's finally catching up. This is exactly what Megyn Kelly exposed. Blake's entire career is a cycle of manipulation, strategic alliances, and playing the victim the second things don't go her way. Whether it was Penn Badgley, Leighton Meester, or now Justin Baldoni, the pattern is always the same. Blake seizes control, twists the narrative to fit her version of events, and the moment the story slips away, she suddenly becomes the misunderstood victim. In 2022, she stood on stage at the Forbes Power Women's Summit, flashing that effortless charm, delivering what was supposed to be an inspiring speech. But instead, she gave away her entire playbook. What sounded like an empowering message turned into a full-blown confession, one that just so happens to align exactly with what Justin Baldoni is now taking her to court over. At the time, no one thought much of it. But now, with her entire career under the microscope, that resurfaced clip is coming back to haunt Blake Lively in the most spectacular way. Standing in front of a captivated audience, she casually admitted to faking her way into roles, molding herself into exactly what directors wanted to see. Just another eager actress, thrilled to be part of the project. But once she landed the role, that's when the real takeover began. She started injecting her own creative input, rewriting scripts, making executive decisions that weren't hers to make, and slowly pushing out the people who actually had the authority. She even laughed about how some directors felt betrayed once they realized what she was doing, as if hijacking entire projects was some kind of genius power move instead of outright manipulation. This wasn't a slip of the tongue. It wasn't an exaggeration. It was Blake Lively, on record, laying out her exact strategy for career domination. And now, just 2 years later, Justin Baldoni is taking her to court for doing the exact thing she openly bragged about. Baldoni's lawsuit claims Blake pretended to be just an actress in It Ends With Us, only to turn around and push him out of his own movie. She allegedly overrode his creative vision and took control, despite the fact that his production company financed the film, secured the rights from Colleen Hoover, and spent years developing it. But the second Blake got involved, she did exactly what she admitted to in 2022. She hijacked the whole thing. This isn't just a one-time controversy, this is a pattern. Blake Lively has been fine-tuning her slow-burn takeover strategy for years. It always started small, just a few creative suggestions here and there, before she steamrolled the entire production. And for the most part, it worked. Any director who resisted was either ignored, outmaneuvered, or quietly pushed aside. She had the formula down to a science. Get cast, gain trust, make herself indispensable, and then seize control. It had never failed her. Until Justin Baldoni. Unlike the A-list directors she had manipulated before, Justin wasn't a Hollywood powerhouse. He wasn't Christopher Nolan or Denis Villeneuve. He didn't have the kind of studio clout to fight back. At first, Blake played nice, acting like just another team player. But soon enough, she was rewriting scripts, making executive decisions, and treating the film as if it belonged to her. Slowly but surely, Baldoni was being edged out. Until he wasn't just sidelined, he was erased. By the time It Ends With Us premiered, Blake had completely wiped Baldoni from the picture. The man who fought to bring the film to life wasn't even allowed to attend his own premiere. While Blake soaked up the spotlight, Baldoni was literally forced to stay in the basement. The ultimate power move. One final way to make it crystal clear who really ran the show. But here's the problem. Blake got cocky. The very words she smugly flaunted in 2022 are now being used against her. What she once bragged about as proof of her influence, it's now undeniable evidence of her industry-wide manipulation. And as more people start connecting the dots, the truth is becoming painfully clear. Blake Lively didn't just hijack It Ends With Us. She's been running this exact con for years. Back in 2019, Justin Baldoni secured the film rights to Colleen Hoover's best-selling novel, a project he had been deeply passionate about for years. His production company, Wayfarer Studios, optioned the rights, and by early 2022, development was in full swing. As both producer and director, Baldoni had a clear vision, a film that would preserve the novel's raw emotional depth and ignite important conversations about domestic violence. But what started as his passion project quickly spiraled into something unrecognizable. In April 2023, Blake Lively was officially announced as the lead, set to play Lily Bloom. On paper, it looked like a major win, an A-list actress attached to a beloved book with a massive, devoted fan base. But behind the scenes, Blake wasn't just signing on as an actress. She was making her move and positioning herself to take control. Production insiders claim that almost immediately after being cast, Blake Lively started demanding changes to the script. And not just minor tweaks, full-scale rewrites that neither Justin Baldoni nor the original creative team approved. She allegedly insisted that certain scenes needed to be altered to fit her vision of Lily Bloom. But over time, it became obvious. This wasn't about collaboration. It was about control. By mid-2023, Blake's influence had stretched far beyond just the script. Sources say she began overriding directorial decisions, leaving Baldoni completely blindsided. He had signed on to work with her as an actor, but instead, he found himself being pushed out of critical creative discussions. And she wasn't done yet. Blake allegedly used her industry connections to handpick a new team of editors and producers, ones who aligned with her version of the film. Baldoni, the actual director and producer, was left watching from the sidelines as his own project slipped out of his hands. By late 2023, Blake was even demanding final cut approval, a privilege that typically belongs to the director or the studio. Even executives were reportedly shocked at how much influence she had managed to secure behind the scenes. By the time filming wrapped in early 2024, It Ends With Us was no longer Justin Baldoni's film. Blake Lively had completely taken over. And here's the real kicker. Insiders claim that Baldoni's original version of the film tested better with audiences, but Blake refused to back down. She insisted on releasing her version instead, making it painfully clear. This wasn't about creative input. This was about erasing Baldoni's vision entirely. Then came the ultimate humiliation. In May 2024, the highly anticipated New York City premiere of It Ends With Us was supposed to be a celebration of the film's release. But for Justin Baldoni, it turned into a total disgrace. When he arrived, he wasn't even allowed on the main floor. Multiple reports confirmed that he was forced to stay in the basement. A shocking move for the very man who had spent 5 years developing this film, securing the rights, and directing it from the ground up, reduced to nothing more than a footnote in his own project. And Blake? She made sure the message was loud and clear. Sources at the premiere claimed she completely ignored Baldoni, treating the night as if it was her victory lap. Witnesses even noted that Baldoni looked visibly uncomfortable because he knew exactly what was happening. The man who should have been front and center was being pushed out of sight. But this wasn't just about the premiere itself. Blake's PR machine went into overdrive. By the next morning, entertainment headlines were flooded with glowing coverage. Blake lively stuns at It Ends With Us premiere. And Baldoni barely mentioned. Interviews were carefully curated to erase any trace of his role in the film's creation, making it seem like he had little to no involvement at all. The final blow wasn't just professional, it was personal. Within hours of the premiere, Ryan Reynolds unfollowed Justin Baldoni on Instagram, a move that sent a very clear message. Blake had made her choice, and Baldoni was officially cut off. This wasn't just a disagreement over a film anymore. This was a complete severance of ties, both professionally and personally. For Hollywood insiders, this was the moment Blake's carefully crafted image started to crack. What happened to Baldoni wasn't some innocent oversight. It was a calculated power move. And as more details emerge, it's becoming impossible to ignore just how far Blake Lively was willing to go to make sure this was her film, no matter who got crushed in the process. Then came the real earthquake. Megyn Kelly has never been one to sugarcoat the truth. And when she obliterated Blake Lively's spotless image, it shook Hollywood to its core. In February 2025, during an explosive segment on The Megyn Kelly Show, she didn't just highlight Blake's downfall, she made it crystal clear that this wasn't some media witch hunt. This was karma, cashing in years overdue. And then, out of nowhere, an interview from 2016 resurfaced. A press junket for Cafe Society that had been buried for years. No one talked about it. No one dared mention it. But in February 2025, the footage found its way online, and within hours, it spread like wildfire. At first, it seemed like just another interview. Kirsty, a Swedish journalist, was doing her job, asking polite, standard questions, even congratulating Blake on her pregnancy. Nothing unusual. But Blake's reaction? Downright nasty. Instead of simply smiling and moving on like any normal person, Blake looked Kirsty up and down and coldly remarked that she had a baby bump too. The problem? Kirsty wasn't pregnant. She could never be pregnant. And later, she revealed that Blake's words weren't just a careless mistake. They were a deliberate jab, meant to humiliate her. And the footage made it painfully clear. Blake wasn't joking. She wasn't being playful. She was mean. The dismissive tone, the smug expression, the refusal to even make eye contact. It was all right there, caught on camera for the world to see, and she wasn't alone. Co-star Parker Posey sat beside her, laughing along, feeding into the toxic high school bully energy. What should have been a harmless, professional interview turned into a public takedown, with Kirsty on the receiving end of Blake's sharp-edged cruelty. For years, Kirsty kept the footage private. She admitted she never spoke out earlier because she feared retaliation. Blake Lively wasn't just another Hollywood actress. She was protected, powerful, and dangerously well-connected. Speaking against her could have easily blacklisted Kirsty from the industry. But now, with Blake's entire career under scrutiny, her manipulative past laid bare, and her long history of mistreating people finally exposed, Kirsty felt safe enough to share the truth. And when that footage hit the internet, it shredded whatever was left of Blake Lively's America's sweetheart image. The second Blake Lively's Mean Girl clip went viral. Her PR team scrambled into full-blown panic mode. Hollywood Damage Control 101. When bad press starts spreading, shift the narrative. Fast. And within 48 hours, that's exactly what happened. Suddenly, TMZ and People magazine were running suspiciously timed stories about how Blake felt uncomfortable filming with Justin Baldoni. The headlines were carefully worded, accusing Baldoni of fat-shaming Blake during a critical on-set moment. But here's where things got messy. The fat-shaming accusations seemed to come out of nowhere. Industry insiders were quick to point out that Baldoni had a documented back injury during filming. He had only asked about Blake's weight before a physically demanding scene, a standard practice for stunt coordination to ensure safety. But now, that routine conversation was being twisted into an insult, a controversy, a scandal. And that's when it all fell apart. Because Blake Lively, she was the last person who could pull the body-shaming victim card. The Kirsty interview scandal was still fresh in the public's mind. This was the same woman who, on camera, mocked a journalist's body in front of a full press room. If she was so deeply offended by weight comments, then why had she been so comfortable publicly humiliating someone else over theirs? The hypocrisy wasn't just obvious. It was impossible to ignore. Suddenly, people weren't just questioning Blake's accusations against Baldoni. They were questioning whether this entire scandal was nothing more than a carefully orchestrated smokescreen to distract from her own nasty behavior. And then, just when things couldn't get any messier, the leaked messages surfaced. The ones that dragged Ryan Reynolds and Taylor Swift straight into the chaos. Private messages from Blake's inner circle revealed something shocking. She had referred to Ryan and Taylor as her dragons, her personal enforcers, the ones she could always count on to publicly back her up when things got messy. And Ryan? He played his part flawlessly. Within days of the controversy exploding, Ryan Reynolds swiftly unfollowed Justin Baldoni on Instagram. No public statements, no official stance. Just a silent but strategic move that sent a very clear message. Blake had officially cut ties with Baldoni, and Ryan was falling in line. And in an industry where optics are everything, Ryan's quiet show of allegiance spoke volumes. But Taylor Swift? That was a different story. For years, Blake had paraded her friendship with Taylor like a VIP pass, attending private events, posting carefully curated photos, leveraging their connection to maintain her effortless cool girl image. But now, as Blake's scandal spiraled out of control, Taylor quietly started pulling back. And it wasn't just Baldoni. Multiple reports suggested that Taylor Swift felt used in the feud, realizing that Blake had dragged her into a personal war she had nothing to do with. And for Taylor, who was already navigating a year of intense public scrutiny, aligning herself with Blake at this moment. Way too risky. She didn't release a public statement. She didn't call out Blake. She didn't defend Justin. She simply stayed quiet. And in Hollywood, silence can be louder than words. While Blake scrambled to rewrite the media narrative, Justin Baldoni was preparing for the real fight in court. In early 2025, Baldoni's legal team, led by powerhouse defamation attorney Brian Friedman, filed a lawsuit against the New York Times. The accusation? Defamation. Baldoni's team alleged that the newspaper had published one-sided, unverified claims that propped up Blake's version of events, printing false accusations without any real evidence. But the real bombshell? Baldoni's legal team produced actual text messages proving that Blake's allegations were either wildly exaggerated or flat-out fabricated. These weren't vague accusations. This was hard evidence. These were hard receipts. The lawsuit sent shockwaves through Hollywood, forcing the industry to finally ask the big question. Had Blake weaponized the media to destroy Justin Baldoni's career? Had she used her deep industry connections to control the narrative, knowing she could rewrite history in her favor? Or was this all just a calculated scheme to protect her hostile takeover of It Ends With Us, no matter the cost? But the real nail in the coffin wasn't the lawsuit. It wasn't the leaked texts. It was the quiet rebellion happening right under Blake's nose. At first, Colleen Hoover publicly supported Blake, standing by her when the drama first exploded. But then, in February 2025, everything changed. Fans noticed that Hoover had erased every mention of Blake from her social media. No posts, no tweets, no interviews. It was as if she had never been associated with her in the first place. The woman whose book Blake fought so hard to control had quietly scrubbed her from existence. And now, with an avalanche of evidence piling up, one question remains. How is Blake Lively going to spin her way out of this one? If you don't want to miss what happens next, hit that subscribe button, like the video, and share your thoughts in the comments. And as always, stay tuned, because this drama, it's far from over.